What happens after 3.5 years is terrifying. What if I told you there's a moment in the future where everything turns? The peace is over, the lies collapse, and the real nightmare begins. That moment comes exactly 3.5 years into the tribulation. It's not just another phase, it's the turning point that opens the door to something so dark, so violent, so horrifying, that Jesus himself said in Matthew 24, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be." Most people talk about the tribulation like it's one long event, but the Bible splits it in two. And what happens after the first half will shake the entire world. Let's break this down. The tribulation is a 7-year period. It begins when a man, known as the Antichrist, makes a covenant, a peace treaty, an agreement with many. Daniel 9 verse 27 tells us, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week." 1 week equals 7 years in prophetic language, and for the first 3.5 years, everything looks like it's working. There's peace in the Middle East. The temple is rebuilt. Sacrifices begin again. The world thinks things are getting better. But right at the middle point, at the 3.5-year mark, everything collapses. During the first half of the tribulation, people will feel hopeful. The Antichrist will be seen as a hero. And then, he enters the temple. This one event marks the point of no return. It's called the abomination of desolation. Jesus said in Matthew 24 verse 15, "When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains." It's not a metaphor. It's a moment. And once it happens, there's no going back. Here's the big question. What exactly happens at that 3.5-year mark? The Antichrist will walk into the rebuilt Jewish temple. He will stop the daily sacrifices, and he will set up an image of himself to be worshipped. He will declare that he is God. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 4 says, "Who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." This is not just blasphemy. It's spiritual war. It's the moment Satan fully takes over the Antichrist and demands the world's worship. From that point on, the tribulation becomes the Great Tribulation. Jesus warned in Matthew 24:22, "And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved." The second half is not just worse, it's unbearable. The judgments intensify, the trumpets continue. Then come the bowls, earthquakes, darkness, boils, rivers turning to blood, heat so intense it scorches skin. Demons are released from the pit, and millions upon millions die. This is not just judgment. This is God pouring out wrath on a world that followed the beast. At the 3.5-year mark, everything becomes mandatory. Revelation 13 verses 16 to 17 says, "And he causeth all to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark." This is where the world system changes overnight. No one can survive without joining it. You can't buy food, you can't access money, you can't travel, you can't live, unless you worship the beast and take his mark. It's not optional, it's global. And once you take it, there's no going back. But even in all this darkness, God sends 2 powerful witnesses. For the first 3.5 years, they preach in Jerusalem. They perform miracles. They speak the truth. They call out the Antichrist. But right after the abomination of desolation, the beast kills them. Revelation 11 verse 7 says, "The beast shall make war against them, and shall overcome them, and kill them. Their bodies lie in the streets." The world celebrates. People send gifts. They rejoice that the truth has been silenced. But 3 days later, God raises them from the dead. They ascend to heaven, and a great earthquake shakes the city. Even in judgment, God speaks. This is the question so many people ask. Why does God allow the last 3.5 years to be so terrifying? During this time, those who refuse the mark will be hunted, executed, starved. Families will hide underground. Believers will whisper prayers in the dark. Children will cry for food that can't be bought. The Antichrist system will track, monitor, and eliminate anyone who stands for Jesus. Revelation 13:7 says, "And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them." This is not the age of revival. It's the age of survival. And those who endure will wear the crown. At the height of the tribulation, just when it seems like the Antichrist's kingdom is untouchable, God strikes. And he doesn't just strike a city. He takes down an entire system. This system is called Babylon in Revelation, and it's more than just a place. It's a global empire, a blend of government, economy, religion, and rebellion. It's everything the world has built without God. Everything it has trusted, everything it has worshipped. And when God judges it, it falls fast. Revelation 18 verse 2 says, "Babylon the Great is fallen, twice for emphasis, because the fall is so total, so final, that nothing remains." But what exactly is Babylon? Is it a real city, a global economy, a religious system, or something deeper? Something hiding in plain sight? We'll get there. But first, you need to understand what makes Babylon so dangerous and why God waits until this moment to bring it down. The same thing that makes Babylon look powerful, its beauty, wealth, unity, is the very thing that guarantees its destruction. Because Babylon doesn't just sin, it boasts in its sin. It doesn't just ignore God. It builds a throne to replace him. Revelation 18 verse 7 says, "She saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow." She thinks she's unstoppable. She laughs at judgment. She believes she can't be touched. That's her mistake. Because right when she's at her strongest, God moves. What's about to happen will shock the world. Babylon's collapse will cause panic on every level: economic, spiritual, political. What looks like a city falling will actually be the unraveling of an entire system. Revelation 18:10 says, "Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come." In 1 hour, not a war, not a campaign, just a command from heaven, and the entire system collapses. The world watches in horror. The fall of Babylon will break hearts around the world. Not because the people loved righteousness, but because they loved what Babylon gave them: wealth, luxury, pleasure, power, control. Revelation 18:11 says, "And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more." The supply chains stop. The stock markets crash. The corporations cry. The kings of the earth stand far off, afraid to even get close. Revelation 18:17-18 says, "For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city?" It's a financial collapse, a spiritual collapse, a global collapse, and the world is stunned because they never saw it coming. Here's where it gets real. Some believe Babylon is a future city. Others say it's symbolic of Rome. Still others believe it's the global world order we're watching form right now. Revelation 17 speaks of a woman riding the beast. She represents a false religious system. Beautiful, adorned, powerful, but she's not serving God. She's controlling the world through spiritual deception. And eventually, the beast she rides turns on her. Revelation 17 verse 16 says, "And the 10 horns shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate, and burn her with fire." Babylon's fall is not just the end of a city. It's the end of a system that tried to erase God. When Babylon falls, the system crashes. But something worse is on the way. Satan himself will enter his final hour. The Antichrist will tighten his grip. And the final battle will be near. But make no mistake, Babylon must fall first. Because God will not allow a false foundation to stand under his Son's return. But where do we run to? Jesus gives a clue. Matthew 24 says, "Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains." This wasn't poetic, it was practical. These instructions could save your life. The hills and caves outside of Jerusalem could hide people who fled fast enough. This one verse might reveal the only safe zones for believers in the last days. But what about those of us who don't live in Judea? Does this mean Christians everywhere need to flee to mountains? Is there a place of safety in the last days for those who trust God? You need to know the answer before you're forced to find out the hard way. We'll get to that. But first, let's talk about what the Bible actually reveals. Let's fast forward to Revelation. In Revelation 12, we're introduced to a woman representing God's faithful people. And in verse 6 it says, "And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God." This detail unlocks one of the most overlooked escape plans in Scripture. God doesn't just tell his people to run. He prepares a place for them, a place of protection, a place outside the system. Not in the cities, not in the markets, not in the centers of power. And here's where the biggest twist in modern thinking gets exposed. The very places people trust for safety will become snares. But in the wilderness, that's not a coincidence. That's a prophetic echo of what Jesus said in Matthew 24. Jesus continues in Matthew 24, verse 21, "For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be." This isn't symbolic. The tribulation is a time of extreme suffering, judgment, and spiritual testing that will come upon the whole world. The second half of the 7 years is called the Great Tribulation for a reason. This is when the Antichrist reveals his true colors. This is when Christians are martyred. This is when demons are released on the earth. And this is when the mark of the beast is enforced. Revelation 13, "And he causeth all to receive a mark, that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark." This isn't just economic control. It's spiritual slavery. But it's temporary, because the 7 years have a fixed end, and Jesus himself will bring it to a close. But before that moment comes, the enemy takes everything he can. What happens if you try to fight it instead of fleeing? What if someone sees the abomination stand in the holy place, and they think, I'm not running. I'm ready. I'll resist. That might sound bold, but here's the truth. The abomination doesn't just mark a shift in politics. It opens the door to something demonic. This isn't a moment for bravery in the flesh. This is a moment that unleashes the worst evil the world has ever known. And what happens next will turn courage into catastrophe. From that moment forward, everything changes. The tribulation reaches full force, and those who try to stand against it in the natural will be crushed. In Revelation 13, the Antichrist rises with power. He has authority for 42 months. And what happens to those who resist? Revelation 13 verse 7 says, "It was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them." Did you hear that? He will overcome them. That means those who try to resist in the flesh, without spiritual protection, without obedience, will be overrun. Not because God failed them, but because they stayed when Jesus said, "Go." Now imagine the moment. The abomination is set up. The Antichrist speaks in the temple, and people realize too late. They try to run, but the roads are blocked. They try to hide, but surveillance is everywhere. They try to resist, but they're unprepared. The pressure comes fast. The mark is required. The economy is locked. The digital system tracks every move. And suddenly, what looked like strength becomes foolishness. Not because they weren't brave, but because they weren't obedient. Jesus said in Matthew 24:17-18, "Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes." That's how fast you have to move. Why? Because there won't be time for second thoughts. There won't be time to grab a bag. The system will lock in instantly. That moment will not move slowly. It will come like a flood. And those who turn back will be swept away. There's a story in Genesis 19. God sends angels to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. They tell Lot and his family, "Escape for your life. Don't look back." Lot's wife hesitates. She turns. She's turned into a pillar of salt. She was almost safe. But almost doesn't count. If you hesitate in the moment of judgment, you don't just lose your chance. You become part of the judgment itself. Jesus said in Luke 17:32, "Remember Lot's wife." Don't fight. Don't look back. Don't hesitate. This is where it gets hard. What if the moment comes and someone you love stays? What if they say, "You go ahead, I'm going to stay and stand"? What if they think they're strong enough? This is why Jesus said in Luke 21 verse 36, "Watch ye therefore and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things." We're not told to fight. We're told to escape, to be found worthy of avoiding the wrath to come. This isn't weakness. This is obedience. And the time to warn your loved ones is now, at the end of the 7 years, when the world is on the edge of total destruction, when armies gather to wipe out Israel once and for all. That's when the greatest confrontation in human history begins to rise. The Antichrist meets Jesus. This meeting occurs in Revelation 16. But not everyone will survive that meeting. Some will still be fighting for the wrong side when the King arrives. In the end, they will fight against God and His Messiah. Most people know Jesus as the gentle shepherd, the healer, the teacher. We picture Him holding a lamb. We hear Him saying, "Love your neighbor as yourself." But what if I told you there's a side of Jesus that many people don't talk about? In the Bible, Jesus is called many names. He's called the Lamb of God because he gave his life for us. He's called the Good Shepherd because he leads us with love. But there's another name, a side of Jesus that people often miss. And this name reveals the side of Jesus the world tries to ignore, the one that demands a decision from all of us. Let's read it together. Revelation 19 verse 11 says, "Now I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse. And he who sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war." Wait, judges and makes war? Yes, this is Jesus as the King, the warrior, the judge of the world. After the resurrection of the witnesses, the final judgments of God will be unleashed. The Antichrist will double down on his reign of terror. The final battle, the Battle of Armageddon, will be set in motion. The countdown begins here. What unfolds next is written, and it's more real than we've ever imagined. And from this moment on, the world will never be the same again. This is the turning point for all humanity, and what you do with it could determine your eternity. This isn't just about the past. What we're about to see has everything to do with the return of Jesus himself. But here's the thing. No matter how powerful the Antichrist appears, his time is running out. Watch closely, because the tables are about to turn in a way no one expects. The bridegroom arrives. But what a sight! This is a side of Jesus that no one has seen before. He's complex, and now we're seeing him in a completely new way. One thing is clear. While Jesus was not a fighter during his first visit to earth, he will be when he comes again. You can't put Jesus in a box or label him as just one thing. He's a warrior when he needs to be. The Son of God goes forth to war. The first time Jesus came to earth, he rode a donkey. That symbolized peace. But the second time, he won't be on a donkey. He'll be on a horse, the mount of a warrior. He's coming to fight. The difference between his two comings is this. The first time, he came to save and heal. The second time, he's coming to judge and fight. If you can't see both of these sides of Jesus, then you don't fully know him yet. You've only seen part of who he is, and your view of him is too small. This may stretch you, and some people feel so uncomfortable with this side of Jesus that they try to avoid it by going back to the Gospels. But you can't do that. If you do, you're running away from Jesus. And if you turn away now, you might miss the most important truth of your life. What happens next will demand a response. Let's look at this picture of him. First, look at the horse. It's a war horse, a charger, not a donkey. A donkey isn't useful in battle, but a horse is. He has an army with him too. Those who stand against it won't even see the blow coming. Look at his titles. Faithful and true. He keeps his promises and his word. Look at his purpose. He's coming to judge and make war in righteousness. Some people laugh at the idea of a just war, but here it is, the first and maybe the only truly just war in history. This war will be righteous. Now look at his appearance. His eyes are flaming with fire. Nothing is hidden from those eyes, and they burn with anger. He has many crowns on his head, showing his complete authority and sovereignty. Look at his names. One is the Word of God, and another is a name we don't even know. This shows a new part of his character that requires a new name. Look at his clothes. A robe that's a mix of white and red. White linen stained with blood. Sometimes, when I take communion and see the white bread and the red wine, I think of Jesus who's coming again. The same colors, white and red, remind us of his return. Look at his army behind him. During his time on earth, Jesus said, "Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels?" That's 12,000 troops. At that time, he didn't use them, but now he will, against men. Look at his weapons, a sword and a rod. The sword comes from his mouth. Jesus fights with his words, and his words can heal or destroy. Above all, look at his title, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. No matter how many kings have existed, he's the supreme king. Here's the interesting part. This picture is what the Jews hoped was happening on Palm Sunday. They got one thing wrong, though, the timing. Many think they misunderstood Jesus, but they didn't. They knew their Bibles and believed God would send a conqueror to save them from their enemies. They knew God promised to set Jerusalem free. The only thing they got wrong was when it would happen. When Jesus came riding in on the donkey that day, they didn't realize he wasn't coming yet to restore the kingdom to Israel. So they shouted, "Hosanna," which means "Save us now," and "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Those words come from a passage where God promises to fight their enemies and defeat them. They weren't wrong to shout that, they just had the wrong time. Jesus couldn't defeat the enemies until he first came to die for them. That's what they misunderstood. When Jesus left the earth at the Ascension, his followers asked him, "Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel?" They wanted to know when he would fulfill that promise. Jesus didn't say, "I'm never going to do that. You have it all wrong." Instead, he said, "It is not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority. He will do it, but not yet." This is where many people have misunderstood Jesus. They thought he chose a donkey because he would never fight. But that's not true. It was because it wasn't yet God's time to restore the kingdom. On Palm Sunday, they hoped he would take action, but it wasn't the right time. Now, in this passage, he comes to do what they had been waiting for. In the vivid imagery of the Scripture, it is described that the head and hair of the Almighty were white as wool, resembling the pure and eternal nature of the Ancient of Days. This portrayal also signifies the wisdom and righteousness of his judgments. But not everyone will make it to that moment. Many will die during the tribulation. Some will be deceived. Some will take the mark. Some will reject Christ forever. And for them, the tribulation doesn't end in victory. It ends in judgment. Revelation 14:11 says, "The smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever." That's why the stakes are so high. You don't want to be here for this. You don't want to wait until the clock starts ticking. Now is the time to surrender to Jesus. So how long will the tribulation last? The Bible doesn't just tell us when, it tells us how long. 7 years. Split in half. Triggered by a covenant. Shattered by betrayal. And ended by the return of the King.
Many seem to be confused because they do not understand the book of Revelation. However, what if there was an animation showing the entire book? Well, we created that. And to watch that, click here.